Spectre Vision Radio.
I woke up in a state of just absolute fear. Like I never felt anything really like that at that point in time, and I still really haven't. I finally made myself get up, and I went to the window, and I actually saw the thing. It was like half covered behind a tree, and it was this elongated, tall humanoid shape. And it was like its skin was like pulled too tight around like almost a skeletal form. Its fingers were like really long. And what I remember most was like it had this smile to it that took up the majority of its face. Like you could the whole ear smile sort of thing. It was like that. But its teeth were like an anglerfish almost, like the pen needle kind of teeth.
They claim that our eyes will just be created a slightly different from what they are. We talk these things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. On tonight's show, I'm going to be talking with Ross, who has another encounter with one of these pale crawlers, or something that certainly sounds like it could be one of these pale crawler type entities. It started when Ross was very young, and then it came back later in his life, along with some occult practice. It's a very interesting story. There's some other interesting elements as well, including a faun-like creature and a weird occult conspiracy with a missing book hidden in some ruins. It's a really interesting story, and we'll get to that in a bit. Before we get to Ross, though, I want to mention that Monday, February 16th, Chad's podcast, the Ruck Rabbit Outdoors podcast, will debut. We're going to do a feed drop on Strange Familiars. If you're unfamiliar with that is, it just means that we're going to put his first episode on the Strange Familiars feed. So everywhere you get Strange Familiars, you will get the first episode of Chad's Ruck Rabbit Outdoors podcast. But after that, make sure to follow Ruck Rabbit Outdoors wherever you get your podcasts, and you can get future episodes of Chad's podcast going forward. We're doing a bit of a role reversal, and I am Chad's co-host. It's a fun project. It's different than Strange Familiars. It covers outdoors people in the widest sense of the word. That'll be coming Monday. Make sure to check it out. And again, follow the Ruck Rabbit Outdoors podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's on YouTube as well. All right, without further ado, let's get to my interview with Ross. I'd like to welcome Ross to Strange Familiars. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm interested in this story. I only know the vaguest details. I know there's an entity that's somewhat like maybe one of these pale crawlers. It's hard to categorize these things sometimes. And that's about all I know about it. So I'm really excited to hear this story. And just before we hit record, you told me it kind of happened in your life and it went away for a while and came back. So that's very interesting. So is there any background we need to know other than the basics? Like, where did this happen and how old were you when it started? And you don't have to be exact on the place, just as comfortable as you are in telling us where it happened. You can just give us a county or whatever, however you want to do that.
Okay, sure. I guess the only thing is I had just moved across the country at this time. Like, I was around 8 or 9 when this first happened. I had just moved from Phoenix, Arizona to like the Appalachian Mountains, like where Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama kind of meet, like that tri-state area, which specifically it was on this mountain called Sand Mountain in the Alabama side, but it was like right on the line. I want to say it's Higdon, Alabama was the name of the town, but it was like a gas station. That was really it, like a post office. But yeah, I had just moved. So it was a new area and it was very unfamiliar initially. But any kid that had not been able to like go in the wilderness, especially on their own before outside of camping, maybe when I was younger, I explored the woods like constantly. That's what I was doing. I wasn't in school. I was out there. And so after a few months, I knew him pretty well. We had Man, I don't know how many square miles there were, but it was a lot. The next neighbor to us was probably a couple miles away on the road. And then the next closest was like 2 or 3 as well, if not a little bit more. So it was a pretty large area. And everything was, it was all right for the most part. It was just right around with my dog or whatever. When things started getting strange was like, I've always had like sleep issues a little bit. Like it was always hard for me to fall asleep, racing thoughts, things like that. We were living in this trailer. It's a single wide trailer. I was on the side with a bay window at the very end. And my parents were on the other side, the opposite side. And from this bay window was probably about maybe 20 feet, 30 feet at most, was the wood line. And there was kind of like a circular area where it had been kind of cleared of trees and things. And all the rest was woods. Like even our driveway to get to this was like a quarter mile long, just long dirt driveway going over a creek and stuff. Anyway, so I was on the edge of the woods, like with this window that was the entirety of a wall, basically. This will matter in a little bit. So as I'm trying to sleep, I'm laying there, as I often did, and I started seeing flashes at first, and I didn't know, I'd never experienced anything like this, but it was flashes of the border of the property where we were at. And like I had been in those woods within a few days. I couldn't exactly pinpoint where, but I knew where it was. And it was like, I was able to see this thing through like eyes that weren't mine. It was darting from like tree to tree. Like it was this weird preternatural like speed of something that was like stalking something. Although I couldn't see from that. It just lasted for a little while at first, a few minutes, and I would snap out of it.
So when you say you were able to see, you're getting sort of, not to put words in your mouth, but correct me, it's sort of almost a download, or are you actually looking out the window and seeing this?
No, I'm actually seeing from eyes that aren't mine. Like I'm like taking like a secondary seat in whatever this thing's, it's like mine is. It's like, it's showing me whatever.
So you
that make sense?
You saw the actual flashes though?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it was literally being transported into something else's mind for a few minutes at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. So you're laying in bed, you see the flashes, and then you get this other sight or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was, I guess the way I'm describing flashes, it was like, I would just be there. It was just an instantaneous, like all of a sudden I'm laying there staring at my ceiling, listening to the fan go around and stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm not there anymore.
Gotcha.
I'm seeing through eyes that aren't mine.
Gotcha. So not flashes of light, but like flash, you're into some other perspective. I see.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a foreign concept that it's kind of hard to explain, especially.
We've had this at least one other time on the show. Someone described something similar. It's sort of like all of a sudden like flashing into another perspective. I believe with an entity as well, like able to view an entity. But go ahead.
Okay. No, I missed that. I have to go back and look into that. I would like to hear somebody else's gone through something like this. Anyways, so it started off for a few minutes, and it's like when something like that happens, like it's such a, like I said, it's such a foreign feeling, such an odd feeling. It's like, what was that? Well, I know I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't asleep. When I came back to my body, like I didn't like wake up. I was just not there for a second and not feeling. So I'm just laying there. There's nothing I can really do.
You were pretty young when this was happening, right?
Yeah, it was like 8 or 9. I was we moved in. It was 94 because 93, there was like this big blizzard there and everyone was kept on bringing it up. And that's the reason I remember the year. We had a lot of snow the following year. And so it was, I'm going to say like the beginning of the school year, which my birthday is in like May. So I was like 8, about to turn 9.
Okay.
It was around that time period.
Where you're flashing into this view of this other thing, that must have been really confusing as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre. During that time period, a lot of strange things happened. Like I remember, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but like when a storm is coming in, you feel the energy off of that.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I noticed that had been before, but it was that feeling, but it was like relegated to an area that I was in. It was like when stepping into certain area or being in certain areas of that property and outside of it, I actually started feeling that energy, but attached to land.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of unique stuff I had never experienced before, and I had just moved and everything was kind of like tumultuous, uncertain. So I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't really. I mean, it's not something you expect to really run into as a kid or have to deal with. And
Yeah.
it was only later on in life that the creature thing, that was absolutely not normal. But outside of that, I didn't know until like later on that a lot of these experiences were not things that a lot of people had been privy to or had gone through.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to interrupt your flow there. So you're flashing into this other view and you're seeing this thing, you said, kind of move from tree to tree. Is that all the view you got that time?
Initially, yeah, it happened every night. The next night, it was a little bit longer. And the weird thing is it would start from the place that it left off the night before. And it took me a little while to realize that this was what was happening. It was like, I would just be laying there and there's no specific time at night. There was no time frame that they would just happen periodically throughout the night. Always before I was sleeping, and it would just be for longer increments each time. It started off a couple of minutes, maybe. Like time is distorted when this happens.
Sure.
So it's a little bit weird, but it would increase like each night. And it was like after a few days of this, like 4 or 5 days, maybe a little bit longer, I started realizing where it was coming from. It was coming like from, I don't know the actual direction, but imagine if you're facing the trailer that we had lived in and the entrance door is north. It was coming from like the northwest of the property line, maybe a little bit past that.
Okay.
And it was coming from that direction and it was making its way towards where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, like the first few times, it was just like confusing. It got very quickly terrifying. It wasn't a good feeling at all.
Yeah. Now, could you see whatever this entity was, like, clearly?
No, I had no, at this point in time, I had not seen it. I had just seen it, like whatever it was showing, it's traversing like the property towards where I was.
Okay. Were you seeing from its view?
Yeah. When I was seeing from its view, I did eventually see it.
Okay.
Like when it finally made its way to that tree line of where my window was, like it never went past the trees. It would usually half cover itself by a tree, lean around them.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple weeks, I guess, after this initially started.
But again, not to interrupt you, but in these like dream flashes or whatever you want to call them, you're kind of seeing from its view.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I'm seeing it like make its way from where it initially started to the tree line outside my window.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
When I actually saw the thing, I came out of one of those states where it was showing me, and I remember this pretty vividly. There was one light. We had one like outside light. It wasn't super great, but you could tell coming from like the extra darkness from being in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, to that little light. You could tell the difference when it got close to that, the light difference, and being able to see the outside of the windows of the trailer. And it was like, there was as scary as it was and as terrifying as a feeling it was, like it didn't like 100% dawn on me that this was happening now. Like I didn't know when this was happening. I didn't know what it was actually at all.
Mm-hmm.
And as I snap out of it, as I go back into my own mind, I woke up in a state of just absolute fear. Like I never felt anything really like that at that point in time. And I still really haven't. I got up. I finally made myself get up and look. Like there was no curtains or anything. So like the window was just like an exposed window. I got up and I went to the window and I actually saw the thing. It was like half covered behind a tree, and it was this elongated, tall person, humanoid shape. And it was like its skin was like pulled too tight around like almost a skeletal form, but not completely skeletal. It was, there was definitely like viscera and musculature to it, but its fingers were like really long. Like there weren't extra joints, but the spaces, the bone between the joints were usually about, I would say maybe the size of most of the entirety of an adult finger, between what would be just a bone segment or a finger segment.
Yes.
And it had this, what I remember most was like it had this smile to it that took up the majority of its face. Like you hear the whole ear to ear smile sort of thing. It was like that. But its teeth were like these, like an anglerfish almost, like the pen needle, like kind of teeth.
Mm-hmm.
It had eyes, but it was like they were like, it was just a black thing. Like I can't really describe them. Like they were there, but they were like, I don't know. For whatever reason, I just remember kind of like these like black holes more than eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it actually did have eyes. And it would sit there and it would motion for me to come out to it. Like it was like a beckoning kind of thing. Like you would kind of wave fingers, like when you're trying to get someone to come to you. it did that, as scared as I was, and I still felt compelled to do it. Like, it was a fight to have to stay inside the house. And before I really realized what I was doing, I mean, I was already walking around my bed. It was at the door, getting ready to go out. Like my room was, there was a little side door. There was my room, there was a little laundry area, and there's a little door, like a side door right there. And so it would have been very easily to go do that. But it was just a compulsion to do that. I wanted to go out the scene, even though it was terrifying, even though there's nobody in their right mind would actually go anywhere near this.
Right.
But that's just what I felt compelled to do it. And from that point in time on, I didn't see it from its eyes anymore. It didn't show me that. But it was almost like that connection stayed between us, but it was maybe used to try to force or compel me to go to it. Mm-hmm. And it would come back. It would come back constantly. Every night it was there. It may not be like right after dawn or right as soon as it would get dark, but it would be there like every night. And as bad as my sleep was at that time, like I lost a whole lot more. Like, it was affecting my school. It was affecting everything.
I imagine so. Yeah. Did it ever come any closer? Did it always stay in that same?
It wouldn't come out of the woods.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know if that was like a border that it didn't. I don't know if it would like just didn't want to cross that in, because there was, like I said, there was a little bit of light. I don't know if that affected it or if it was just something where it was like I had to have a mutual, it'll only come to a certain point and then like I had to go the rest of the way. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was something like that but yeah, for whatever reason, it would always stay in that tree line.
Wow. And I know you were a pretty young kid and it's dark and it's some distance away, but could you make a guess to the height of it?
Oh yeah, it was really tall, 7 to 8 feet, most definitely. It was tall.
Okay.
Now I know where the tree that it first was at. I knew those trees, and it was up there. It wasn't like hitting branches necessarily, but they were pine trees, so there wasn't like a lot of lower branches, and they were kind of small. Mm-hmm. But it was big, and I don't know that it was like I couldn't see like much the bottom of it because it was like kind of halfway behind the thing. So it may have been kneeling for all I really know. It could have been like much taller. But from judging from like the way the hands were, like the length of that. Actually, have you ever seen that movie Pumpkinhead? A long time ago?
Yeah, I saw it in the theater, but that would have been whenever it came out. So many years ago, yeah.
Do you ever know how long that thing's hands were in that?
I think I do, yeah. Yeah.
It was similar to that. Like, it was really big. It was like twice the size of a normal person's hands, at least. So, I mean, judging by that and the lengthiness of his arms and stuff, it was big. It was really big. So it was like in the 7-foot range.
Yeah, so it's definitely. So it would have been bigger than like the adults in your life at the time, that kind of thing. You would have.
Oh, yeah, by a good bit.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. That is crazy. How long do you think it went on for? That it would just be there?
It was a little bit longer than a year.
Wow.
This is where it gets kind of stranger, I guess. I was brought up as a Christian, and I still kind of had the remnants of that faith at that point in time. So I had prayed, and like I tried to do anything that I could think of the concept of you're taught, I guess. And growing up in that faith that like invoking Jesus' name will make things go away, or demons or whatever. Sure. None of it ever worked. At least, but I tried everything. I couldn't tell my early life. I had nobody to talk to about this or nobody to tell about this. It wasn't the best like home life, and I wouldn't have been believed either way. So I didn't even try, really.
That was my next question. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think looking back, I think that I have a kind of a theory. I've talked to people I've talked to about this. Like, I've explained this to that may have some knowledge of folklore and different things. And I think that it's attracted to like tumultuous children specifically, but that are not in the best positions, like that are like either going through some sort of major upheaval in their life or like abuse or something like that. I think they're attracted to that. Mm-hmm. And I think like the old stories of like changelings, where children are usually children, sometimes they're older, going into the woods with fairies, things like that, where the fae will take them and like they're not seen or they're replaced by something else. Mm-hmm. I think it was something of that nature. But eventually just like putting it out there, like into the void, that I like almost begging or pleading for this thing to leave me alone, to not have to deal with this anymore, not to make it stop. Yeah, like a child screaming in the void. I mean, that's kind of the point that I was at that time. One night after the usual watching out the window at this thing popping up from trees behind different trees and trying to get me to come out or whatever, I was actually asleep, and I did wake up out of sleep state, and I was kind of groggy, and there was this thing at the foot of my bed. Like I had it was an older bed, but it had like wooden slats on the bottom part. So then there's a headboard as well. So the foot of the bed, it goes up maybe 6 or 8 inches or something like that. And there's this thing like perched on the base of my bed, and it looked like it was a faun. I mean, in traditional like Greco-Roman era representation of a faun, half goat, half human.
Right.
But it was different. It was like the closest thing that I've ever come to having an accurate portrayal of what this was. Is have you ever seen the movie Pan's Labyrinth?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, the faun that like talks to the little girl, like how it has the goat features in like kind of humanoid features, but they're not traditionally what you would think. It was more like that.
Okay.
Looking more like a monster than it would like half human, half animal.
Right.
And I don't know how it talked to me. I remember it was really fuzzy of this, but it told me that it could make it go away, but it would have to have a price. It would have to have payment in return. And I don't know what it was. I don't know what it wanted. My memory of partially dealing with this thing is gone, but whatever it was, I paid it. And it, true to its word, it made this thing go away. And it did not happen again for years.
Wow. So you made a bargain or you made a deal and you don't even remember what that deal was?
No, I have no idea. I mean, it may have been partially from desperation, or it may have been just my not having been super attuned to feeling the, lack of a better term, energies that come off of different things. But this thing didn't seem like overtly evil.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't seem like overtly wrong. Like it didn't have the same feeling as like the gray man.
Right.
As what I call the other thing. His skin was very pale, it wasn't exactly like, it wasn't dark gray. It was like an ashy gray.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I am calling it a gray man. But I didn't have a bad feeling, but it was also, if anything, it was like almost like an apathy, like a somewhat jaded feeling, like someone that wouldn't care to see you die, but wouldn't like necessarily, it wouldn't bother it, but it wouldn't at the same time want that to happen. It wouldn't make that happen, if that makes sense. That's the kind of feeling I had for this thing. But yeah, with everything else that was going on at that time period, especially, like I was just at my wit's end. At the time, I didn't see any other way out.
Yeah.
And I had this thing that just appears at the foot of my bed and telling me I can make it go away. And I did. And I tried to remember. I don't know if that was part of what I gave away or what, but I've tried to remember and I have no idea.
Wow, that's so interesting. But it worked in a sense. You stopped seeing it at least for a time.
Oh yeah, for years, for quite a while actually. And when it came back again, the reason it was able to come back was from another person, like making a doorway for it to come back. She was 9, so I was probably in high school before I saw it again, maybe a little bit after. But yeah, it was a really strange time period. And that whole area was, like I said, it was really like the energies that were flowing off of that area were all very unique. It's all gone now. There was a tornado that came through and there were several tornadoes that came through and just ripped up like the entirety of that landscape. Like there was just one specific area that I was very attached to that I liked spending time. And it was like something out of a freaking movie. It was in a little bog, right? And it was a tree stump that had a perfect bowl shape in it. It looked like it was a natural made like cauldron. It was on the only bit of dry land, like hop, like little tufts of grass and stuff to get to it. But it was like almost like a natural altar thing made in the earth. It's like a stream that was trickling up from inside the mountain and like that made into this bog. It was a very unique area. And I think that was part of what was initially attracting those things to it. And then I guess, I don't know whether it be the circumstances or something about either the circumstances I was in or me in general, I don't know, attracted these things to me. For what reason, I don't know, other than the gray men potentially being I think they're both probably Fae, actually, but I don't know what would happen if I went with it, but I think that's why they were in that area.
Yeah.
And then just happened upon me. Maybe it was just like easy prey. I don't know.
Wow. All right. So many years go by. And then, so tell me how this comes back into your life.
Okay. So at the time I was in high school and I had gotten into magic and the occult. pretty heavily. My neighbor had introduced me to what at the time was Wicca, and I didn't know really there was much more outside of that until later. Like I would be reading, like I had some, I remember I used magic. It wasn't Magic Without Tears. That was hard to get, but it was I had one of Crowley's books, and I also had a copy of 3 books of occult philosophy. And that's what was what I was reading. I was also carrying these around, and this guy, I knew him. He wasn't in our friend group. He was kind of like cliquey sort of thing, but he was in one of the other groups that kind of people intermingled and stuff. And he approached me one day, and he was like, "Hey, I kind of have a weird question, but I kind of need help with something. Like, it's kind of related to, I think it was just, he said magic or whatever. It's related to this, like, the witchcraft stuff that you study." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And he's like, "Well, you can come over after school." And I was like, "Yeah." So I ended up going over his house, and at first I thought this was complete and total bullshit. It was just a weird story, and I didn't believe any of it at first, actually. But this is back in the AIM days, like AOL Instant Messenger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was what we're using. Because look, I mean, I've been contacted by this guy on AIM, and I'm not sure who he is. I don't know how he got my contact, and he's being like really vague, but he wants me to go find this thing, and like wants to pay me for it. And I'm like, okay, how do I fit into this? Whatever. And so the first night he let me read over the chat logs and stuff, and it was a lot. It was multiple pages. I mean, it wasn't like so much that somebody that was a pretty decent writer couldn't like write up a conversation between somebody. And because at the time, like the chat logs were saved into text files. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't hard to do. I really didn't have any answers for him, but like I told him that I'd come back over, and if the dude showed up or if I could help in some way, I would, whether it be like finding out like some way of giving him the information to do like a protection spell or whatever I could do. And I thought it was just him kind of with me. Because like I said, I didn't know him super well. So I wasn't sure really what to make of it. I just thought it wasn't legitimate. But after I'd gone over there a few more times, and it was kind of cool. I didn't mind hanging out with him. He was a cool dude. And like we'd watch like Courage the Cowardly Dog after high school. And he wasn't very far from the high school. He lived like maybe a couple miles from the high school. And eventually the guy did message while I was there. And we started talking back and forth. And this guy was like super cryptic. I don't know why. And then we're kids, and he wants us to go to this place that he calls the castle and retrieve a book. And I'm like, what the hell? This is really weird. We're both trying to figure out like what this is because we don't know. He won't give us any more information. I don't remember what it was, but we have his handle, like the handle he was referred to as, and he ended up getting another name eventually after some time period, but I can't remember what it was. I mean, I'm like 40 now, and I was in freshman in high school.
Sure. Yeah.
But around the time that when he first messaged, like weird stuff started happening. And like, I think one of the first occurrences, the high school that I went to, in order to get to like my friend's house or this guy's house, we passed over this railroad, like this big section of railroad tracks. Like you kind of hop on there and walk down those, like maybe a quarter mile, and then hop off and go into the woods and cut through his house. We found a deer, and it was fresh. It was a freshly killed deer, and it was missing its head, and it was drained of blood, and I think it was missing some organs, but there was no smell to it. It was like it had been killed very recently, and it was just laying on the railroad tracks, like just there. We all thought it was really strange. So, but at the same time, like I could have been somebody hunting when they shouldn't have been, and just wanted to get rid of the carcass, so they threw it on railroad tracks and get hit. You're gone, but they kept the head for whatever reason, right? And we started finding cats and dogs, and it was usually just cats and dogs after that in the same state. Heads gone, body drained of blood, sometimes organs missing.
Wow.
And it was other weird stuff around, like the woods that were like this whole area is really, well, at the time it was very rural. This was in the 90s, early to mid 90s. And it was like 88 before there was even a highway into this place. Like it was like really pretty remote. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of woods and stuff. And we started finding weird stuff in the woods, like different geometric patterns of like rocks laid out in like little piles of different patterns and things that looked like some sort of, I don't know whether it would be like some sort of sigil work or spell work of some sort. I mean, at the time I knew enough to realize there was some sort of significance to the geometric patterns, but I didn't know what.
Right.
One of around that, it was also like, there was a weirdness in the air. I don't know if you've ever experienced, it's almost like when the wind picks up, but it almost like whispers to you, and like it makes a chill kind of run down your spine, and like your stomach kind of like tenses up. Have you ever had that kind of feeling like right before something bad is about to happen?
Sure.
It was like that, but it was constant. I started noticing there was a friend of mine actually had stayed over. We both had Dreamcasts, and we were playing with Soul Calibur. And I smoked from 12 till 5-6 years ago. Anyway, so it was like I had opened the window to smoke a cigarette, and there was this big black dog that was just sitting across the street on the little road that we like. I lived in it was like two duplexes like stuck together, and I was in like the bottom right hand side, and my window was facing the street, and there was this big black dog. It was like I don't know, like a mastiff maybe. This is a really big black dog, and it would just sit there. Like when I first noticed it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but it's a dog. Why? It's not a big deal. But a few hours later, go to smoking another cigarette, and it's there. It's still there. It's not moved at all. It's this big freaking dog sitting and staring. It's staring at me. It's staring at the window where my room is. And I call over my friend, and I was like, hey man, you see this dog? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of weird. But I didn't think a lot of it. The next night, it's back. They keep coming back. And it was a regular occurrence. The dog every night would show up sometime after dark and sit across the street.
Wow. And
I just got increasingly weird. There was like a kind of a turning point. I was over at actually the same friend's house. I was hanging out with him and his sister. And again, we're outside smoking cigarettes, where me and his sister were. So we're all sitting there. And there's a what do you call it? A light on like a telephone pole, like a little ways off from his house. And the wind picks up and it's full. And so there's like a bunch of dead leaves on the ground. And like a little dust devil starts like swirling up these leaves. And for whatever reason, it caught all of our attention. So we were watching it. And it kind of swirled and hit like the road. And as soon as it did, it was like if you were to take a person or the shape of a person, an invisible person, and you were to stick leaves on their entire body. And so that all you could see is the invisible parts and the leaves on their outside. It took that shape of a human and walked across the road and hit the other side and swirled back into leaves and went off. Me and his sister, we just dropped our cigarettes and kind of ran back in the house. It was really strange. And that was around the time period that I started seeing the gray man thing again.
Strange Familiars is brought to you by our patrons. Thank you, patrons. Thank you so much. We could not do the show without you. If you like Strange Familiars, you'd like to help us make the show and get extra content besides, you can become a patron at Patreon. It's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get commercial-free versions of the weekly shows, plus extra episodes. We do at least one full extra episode exclusively for our patrons every month. Sometimes we do more. And our Patreon patrons get to participate in an ongoing paranormal experiment. It's already kicked off, but it's fashioned in such a way that you can join at any time. For more information, go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars. As part of that paranormal experiment, our patrons have been getting 1 or 2 live streams a month as well. So even more content. Again, it's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. There's also an option on Apple Podcasts. It's called Patron of the Strange there. Our Apple Podcasts subscribers get the commercial-free shows weekly and the extra shows monthly as well. And very soon we'll be activating memberships on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube. That's free. Anybody can do it. Even if you listen to the show elsewhere, please subscribe on YouTube because that helps us out. But we'll be activating membership soon, and our YouTube members will get the extra shows monthly. And plus, we'll probably throw some extra video stuff up there for our YouTube members as well. And I want to thank all of our patrons, no matter where they're supporting us. Thank you so much.
I was a teenager, we drive around a lot. So there was a lot of things that was really to do around that. So I started noticing it, like, would be at night and like, I would see something white and like peeking out from the woods. At first you write it off, like, there's no way. It had to have been something else, but it started becoming more frequent. Anytime that I would be on the mountains, like I lived in a valley at that point in time between Sand Mountain and Lookout Mountain. And anytime I was on either of the mountains, it would do the same thing as it did before. It would come to the tree line and it wouldn't really do the beckoning thing. Like the compulsion wasn't there as much, but it would still kind of just watch where I was at.
Wow.
One of the weirdest times was myself and a friend and this girl that I had known her from school, but I'd never been to her house or anything like that. But we went up there to go hang out with her, and I'd never been to this girl's house, and we rode in the back of a truck, and it was like in the middle of winter, so like we're covered up in blankets. It's super not a safe thing at all.
Yeah.
But 90s.
Right.
But anyway, so I didn't even see the way, I didn't see the way, like what this place looked like. It was nothing. It was just covered up in blankets in the back of the truck. And we hopped out, and it's in the middle of like the blood. I can't overemphasize how dark it is, like on top of these places. There's no light pollution at all. It's just pitch black. And we hop out and go into her house and stuff. And she was also into the occult pretty heavily at that time period. I kind of explained a little bit about what was happening with this guy, and she was kind of intrigued by it. And she didn't know either. Like none of us really had an idea still what was going on about this with this guy that was contacting us. But at this point in time, we're all pretty certain that if it was bullshit, it wasn't like, it was like over orchestrated for like really what payoff. We have no idea. We didn't know, but so we were kind of like thinking it was true. So I'm sitting there in her room, and I started getting these flashes again, or a similar sort of thing, but I'm not seeing out of this eye. Like I'm not seeing back into this thing's eyes again. Like I'm seeing like where it is. It's like showing me pictures, like tableaus almost of where it's at. Like the first one, it's sitting on this fence, like watching the house that we were in. And I hadn't felt anything like that or anything similar to that since the first time it had happened. And it was still a different thing, but it had this like a similar feel to it. And I told her, I was like, hey, this is going to be kind of out of the blue or whatever, but does this make sense? And I kind of explained like the way that like the fence, part of the fence that it was on was like a wooden post that was like sunk in the ground, and it had another diagonal post going up, and then there was another top fence post, and it was kind of like at the corner of where another line of fence had connected to it, but it was like in an opposite direction. I'm like, hey, is this anywhere near here? And she's like, yeah, that's like when you first turn on our driveway. So she's explaining where it was, and I was like, okay, that's weird. She's like, why? Wait, I mean, how did you even know this? And I was like, so I told her about the whole break, and I shared my story, and she thought it was really bizarre, but it just like, that whole night, it just kept on doing that. It was almost like an intimidation thing, I guess, or to let me know that like it was back. Like it was for sure back.
Right.
I think because of the place I was living, like when I was living in that valley, it wasn't in the middle of nowhere. Like there was no consistent forest. There's trees around everywhere, and there's little bits of forest, but there was houses intersecting enough. Like it was almost like I couldn't make it completely in the woods to where I was. So like any time that I was out in the country, which was not very hard, and we were surrounded by it, like it would come to where I was at. And so that's kind of when it started coming back, and shadow people started showing up a lot more. And I would have thought that maybe it was like onset of some sort of mental illness or something initially, if I hadn't had so many shared experiences during this time period with others around me. It wasn't just me that was seeing like the black dog thing, whether it was a real dog or not. I mean, it's kind of strange that it was doing this. Like I had at least 2 other friends that saw the same thing that I did. The same thing with the leaf person thing that was walking across the street, the dead animals. I would be with friends frequently. So, I mean, other people started seeing it as well as the shadow people that were like in the woods, especially around that one dude's house. And after some time, things started dying down a little bit. But I was in 9th grade around that time period. I don't really remember how old I was, but it was a couple years later. I was kind of briefly the guy on the couch. I don't know if you remember I think it was How High with Dave Chappelle, and no, it wasn't. What was that?
I know it's Half Baked or something.
Half Baked, yes, that's what it's called. Half Baked. The guy on the couch. Yeah, that was me briefly for a while. Like I left high school when I was in 9th grade, and I was that guy on a series of friends' couches for a little bit. Anyway, so I'm just like waking up or whatever to people, because people had just showed up at the house I was kind of crashing at. And it was an acquaintance of the girl whose house it was, but she had brought a friend with her. And it was the same guy that had originally brought me into this story about this guy that contacted him about the castle and all that.
Right.
And I'm never expected to see this guy. I mean, this is like in a different town in like Tennessee. Like it's like an hour away from where I was, or where I had lived, where we both lived. And he shows up and we see each other and he just beeline. I found out what a castle is. I know what it is. Like I found out more about the guy. I know where the castle is. I know what it is. I'm just like, okay, what is it? So he shares his story. And basically, the guy had contacted him. He was an occultist from up in the Chicago area. This would have been like in probably the 70s or so, 70s, 80s. Like he was in some of the occult groups around that time period, but he was ostracized from that for just being not a good person, I guess, and being also into some really like heavily dark things. Mm-hmm. And that was a bit of information you found about him. He's okay. So what the place he was trying to get us to find was called the Castle. The description of this place matched this place called Corpsewood Manor. That was like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away from where we lived. And at the time it wasn't super well known, but what it was is like, it was a house that was owned by this gentleman and his husband. He did something in psych and chemistry. I can't remember his title, but he worked at one of the labs in Chicago at the time that like was heavily involved with, sounds insane, but it was heavily involved with MK Ultra.
Okay.
And he ended up leaving his wife and hooking up with his housekeeper at the time. And he sold his house in Chicago and took the money along with, I think it was like 12,000 hits of LSD that he had from his psychiatry, chemistry related stuff. And he moved to this place in Georgia and he like bought this land on this little mountain. I guess it would have been like maybe the foothills of Appalachia. And when they first moved to this area, they found that the road that they were on had this dead horse. And he thought that this is a good sign. So he's like, okay, we'll call this place Corpsewood or whatever. And they built a mock castle in the middle of nowhere. And at the time, this is like rural Georgia, which, I mean, we're not okay with people like from the north, for one. And also people that were not of heterosexual persuasion. Mm-hmm. So it was really bizarre why they decided to do this. It just seemed not the best of game plans, but they did it. They move out there, they sink all the rest of the money in building this place, and it resembles a castle. It's like it's done with like flagstones on the outside. Anyways, so around 88 or 89, they're well known in the area amongst some of the teenagers and like people in their early 20s for being kind of like a place where you go party. Like they made their own wine, and they always had LSD. And at some point in time, this guy gets the idea of, I'm going to rob these guys. Obviously, they have money. They have this giant freaking house. Like, it's in the middle of nowhere. No one's going to see me. So he goes up and they have these two giant freaking black dogs. I forget. They're both named after, one's name is Beelzebub. I can't remember the other one. Anyways, so he ends up killing both of the dogs and shooting one of them in because they're like, we don't have any money. We took all the money that we did have. We used buying this place and building it. Like there's no money. This guy ends up killing both of them and just burning their house down. So anyways, the place that they were trying to get us to go to is this place called Corpsewood. Apparently him being involved in what he was involved up there and also being involved in the occult world as well. Apparently there's some documentation from either or both that was this book that this guy wanted us to go get. Why he wanted us to go get it, I don't know. Why you would contact two teenagers somewhere, I don't know. Still don't know. But that's pretty much what he told me. And like around that time period, things started getting weird. There was, again, that air, like that, like whispering, when that weird feeling started permeating the air again. I ended up having a friend die actually within a few days of that happening. It was all really bad. After a few weeks, it all died back down again. And it would be like every few years, like this Corpsewood thing would keep popping up. Like the gray man thing never came back after that, I don't know what you would call it, that time period, like when I was in high school was the last time I saw it. This became a really regular thing, but at the time, it's like, I mean, it never came to me. I was old enough to realize that like whatever, it was obviously not able to come and get me or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, it was there. It was unnerving as hell, but it's like, it was not regularly at my home. And when I did go somewhere else, it's not like it could come into where I was. So I just kind of lived with it. And it eventually, as I got older, I didn't see it again. After I probably was 17, maybe the last time I saw it. And I really think that the person that the person that wanted us to retrieve that book or whatever, that is the only explanation as to why all that happened. But I think that I can come up with is that he opened a doorway for whatever kind of not ideal or malevolent things to kind of get in as a pressure tactic. Like, I think that's what I think happened as far as why everything kind of came back and why things exploded the way they did. It was a constant, like, in these time periods, it would be like this constant barrage of just weird supernatural stuff on top of the other outside weirdness. Like, even during the first thing that happened when I was in high school, and I don't know what to refer to them as, the first instance or whatever, my parents were divorced. So I went out to Texas to stay with my father for a little while. And before I left, I had this really weird thing that happened, right? Again, I was asleep and I woke up out of a dead sleep into a state of just being completely awake. And I sat up, and as soon as I sat up, I was no longer where I was, in a different place. And I was on the edge of this pit. And like below me was like this darkness that had substance to it, where the darkness, it was darkness, and above me, like, it was like this light, right? And like where the two met, it was like the tendrils of the darkness, where you could see them like wiggling around like they were squid tentacles or something. Mm-hmm. It was really strange. And there was this collection of voices. It was like if you were to like superimpose like maybe dozens or hundreds of voices all over each other saying the same thing at the same time. And it was like pleading and begging, like, don't go. And they just pleaded over and over again. And I felt like I should drop into this pit. Like it was something that was pleading for me not to, right? So I snap out of this, whatever it was. And I watched this little creature that was like do you know what a Baku is?
Not sure.
A Baku, they're usually referred to in Chinese and Japanese mythology, but there's Asian mythology in general, but specifically in Chinese and Japanese, they're dream eaters. They look like a mix between like a pig and an elephant and something else. They're kind of like woolly at the same time. They're these little creatures. Anyways, I see this little thing like scamper from my bed into the shadow. Like it went into an area of my room where the shadows were extra dark, and it disappears into that. I had the same thing happen in Texas while I was going and visiting my father. I again woke up in the same state, and this time it was being on this hallway, and like at the end of this hallway there was this door, and the tendrils, the same black tendrils, were like kind of coming out from underneath or the cracks around the door. And as I'm like reaching for the handle, the same voices are like, don't go, don't open the door, don't leave, don't go. They're just such weird time periods. There was not really any end. They just trickled into other weird stuff happening, sleep paralysis instances. And there's still reverberations to some of the stuff that I experienced to this day. I'll intermittently have weird bouts of sleep paralysis related things, as well as every few years the Corpsewood thing will still pop up. I have not made it out there. Like right now, Corpsewood is still there. A place where the book is, as far as I know, and as far as pictures as of 5 years ago, it's still there. And the last people that I had that I'm aware of or whatever were from the paranormal group. And where they parked their car, there was a pile of dead, gutted deer. As they went up, they kept on finding cages, like pet carriers. And the place has become kind of a mecca for teenagers that dabble or want to dabble in theistic Satanism and things of that nature.
Right.
They go out there, like they bring animals, sacrifice and stuff. It's become a mecca for people like that. And there are people that go out there that are seriously occultists as well. So the area, it's not safe. It's not safe at all. The cops don't go up there. Nobody goes up there unless they're either just super curious or have some sort of ill will or ill intent. So outside of bringing others with me, I just haven't had a chance to do that, even though I'm still a few hours away from the place where I'm living now. But also, I don't know how good of an idea it is. The guy that owned this book was most definitely tied up in like dark occultism as well as CIA related crap.
Right.
The guy who owned Corpsewood and had it built or whatever. You can look into his history, like all this stuff is documented. When I first started finding out about it, it was like kind of before this had become as well known. It was like in the early days of the internet and all that stuff. And like none of the stuff was online. None of the stuff was as well known as it is now. It's still not super well known. It's kind of in the periphery of a lot of people's that deal with that kind of thing.
Wow. Did he give you like the name of the book? Do you remember anything about that he wanted you to retrieve?
No, there was no name. It was something that they wrote. It was a book that they made.
God.
That's one of the reasons that it was so valuable to them, or that this is assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
This is the assumptions that we were making, or whatever. The reason that this would be valuable is because coming from, like I said, a dark occultist who also was active in like CIA torture and mind control stuff.
Right.
It seems like that would be probably a pretty valuable thing to anybody else. But why this guy couldn't go get it for himself, I don't know. There's also the possibility that he was trying to lure us to that area to kill us. I don't know.
Or for who knows what reason. Yeah, it could be any number of dark reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, so it's kind of where, like I said, there's people will go up there occasionally, and you can go on Google Maps or whatever. And people that have driven and hiked up into the area, there's still like the skeletons of buildings and stuff. So the last pictures were taken, I want to say like 2018 or something, 2019. I may be wrong about that, but like it still exists where the guy explained it or whatever. Maybe at some point in time, I'll make a trek out before I move out of this area, which will probably happen in the next year or so. I may make an expedition to go find it. But at the same time, I don't know that I really want that kind of thing in my life, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wonder if it would end up opening another door for you.
I mean, it very well. I mean, I'm much more educated when it comes to occultism now. I've been reading and researching, practicing for a while, really off and on since I was a teenager. But as far as more doors being open, like I'm pretty confident that I would be okay. But at the same time, that's just not something that really anybody wants in their life. You don't want to have to go through and deal with all that. But at the same time, there's been this like nagging voice or this nagging bit of my history or my past that keeps coming back over and over again, that I just want it to be done. I mean, it may not even be there. I could just go there. I can go look. It's not there. And then, okay, it's done. I don't have to deal with this ever again. So I don't know if it's worth the potential for it to be really bad to just finally be over it. Or I don't know. It's something I've been mulling over for a really long time.
Yeah. I'm looking at photos of it now. It's a definitely interesting looking place.
Yeah, the history of that place is really bizarre. They had the main house, and then off the main house, there was a place they called a chicken coop. And above that, it was a 3-story chicken coop, for lack of better terms. That was actually the bottom of it. And they had something else. I don't remember what was in the middle part, but then on the very top layer was the place they called the pink room, which is where like they would bring people, and there's kind of like the party room and stuff where people would just get drunk and eat tons of acid. Really weird thing. I still had my doubts, even after everything got really strange with that part of it. When dude was trying to pressure us into going or whatever, there's still part of you that kind of like second guesses everything. So, why would there be a castle around here? Why would it? There's no way that this stuff can exist. Just because somebody knows how to put like pressure magically on other people doesn't mean necessarily that they're stable, sane, or not lying.
Right.
But then when we actually found out that this place does exist, how close it is, and then the story behind it, it just got like way more real.
Yeah. So at the time he's contacting you, the murders had happened. This place is abandoned, right?
Yeah. And the murders had happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
You think the place would be looted? Did he have some knowledge that the book would still be there?
As far as I know, it's not in a place that you would ever think to look for anything.
Wow.
I don't want to really explain where it's at.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm it's so interesting. I would be so interested, but then I don't really want to see what's in that book.
Yeah. That's what it's like part of my, I guess, morbid curiosity. I do, but at the same time, I don't.
Right. Yeah.
It could be really bad, but at the same time, like if there is something like that exists, and if it is like that dark or has that kind of error to it, would it not be better to like have it at least somewhere where it's not available like to other people? I don't know how many other, well, I guess people now will know more about it. I'm sorry.
And the other thing is he might have contacted somebody else to go get it. You might not have been the only folks he was contacting.
That's very true. It's just, it is very possible.
So my other question is, and I tend to agree with you for a couple of reasons. That, again, what do I know? But calling these things that you were experiencing the Fae, was there anything other than the fact that this one thing seemed very faun-like that made you believe you were dealing with the Fae?
Well, yeah, over the years, I've tried to get answers. Like I've shared this story with other people and tried to put it out there a few times to try to understand it for myself, because it's such a bizarre thing and it was traumatic, really. And I don't like having unanswered questions, I guess. So I've tried to figure that out. But the people I've asked, that I've talked to, that have, like, there's been an occultist friend of mine who lives in Europe that I have brought this story to, and that seems to be what they think it is. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the kind of the consensus amongst people that I've talked to that have an understanding or dealing with folklore or those kind of entities. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense. Like the way that it operates, unless if it's a flesh and blood creature, it has abilities that no other flesh and blood creature has.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, come on, it's not.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, it's not. So I'm currently writing a book about like fairies and other sort of liminal entities in Pennsylvania. And there's at least 2 accounts that I can think of whirlwinds. And one of them is a whirlwind that turns into a little man.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
That's fascinating. I've never heard of it ever explained. What's the story behind that?
Good. Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, as best as I can recall, an account of a woman who she might have been a girl at the time. I think she was riding her bike home from her friend's house, and she sees this little whirlwind. I don't know if it came out of a field, but it essentially, I think it might have come out of a cornfield, but I may be wrong. But anyway, it suddenly takes the form of a little man, and I think walks across the street, doesn't take much notice of her, and disappears into the field or something like that. But she literally said she saw a whirlwind at first, and then it just takes the form of this little being.
So great.
There's at least there's another note about a fairy whirlwind in there as well. I'm not sure if that one took the form of an entity or anything, but it definitely was like, yeah, they talk about a fairy whirlwind.
That's amazing. I've never run across anything that was similar to that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out when it comes out. Like anything that I could find that like is related, even tangentially, I would definitely interest in. But that is just fascinating.
Yes.
And you said that also there was somebody else that had a similar connection as far as the seeing through something else's eyes.
Yes. Yeah. And at this point, with heading towards 600 episodes, I cannot tell you what it was, when it was, but maybe listeners can point it out. But I remember it was a fellow, and I think he was laying in his bed, and he would get the flashes of this thing like coming maybe up the stairs. I think he lived in maybe an apartment building or a shared house or something. And he would get flashes in of its view, like coming up his stairs, I believe. So, but it was, at least your account reminded me very much of that. I'm sure a listener somewhere will remember. If you're on Discord, right?
Yes.
If you're on Discord, ask there. There's some people there that have way better memory on the shows than I do. Ross, thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you listening.
If anything else weird happens, you know where to find me.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Our recording schedule has changed a bit for Strange Familiars. That's why Allison has been absent in the studio for the past few episodes. Once we get used to this new schedule, though, I'm sure she'll be back. And when Allison comes back, we will continue the curiosities of the week. Until that time, though, you can still support us by going to our Etsy shop. Our Etsy shop name is Lost Grave, but there's links to the Etsy shop at strangefamiliars.com and in the show notes to almost every episode at strangefamiliars.com. Or if you go to Etsy and you type Strange Familiars in the search bar, you should see our stuff come up that way as well. Over at Etsy, we have artwork, prints and originals, including the artwork for tonight's show, which didn't take me that long to do, so it will be lower priced than the usual artwork. I've also been doing some paintings. I've just been inspired to explore that world a little more. Most of those have sold already, but keep your eye on the Etsy shop. I'll be doing more of those as well. Also at Etsy, Strange Familiars t-shirts, stickers, patches, and more. My books are there. If you get them from us on Etsy, I will sign them before we pack them up. You don't even have to ask. Some of my music is at Etsy as well. Allison has some photos and other bits of ephemera there. Once again, our shop name is Lost Grave, and you can find it through links at strangefamiliars.com and in the show notes. And a big thank you to everyone who supports us on Etsy. That's yet another way to support the show and get some cool stuff besides. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back soon with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. If you want to hear more or purchase music, you can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com. Strange Familiars is on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars. You can join the Strange Familiars gathering group there. We're on Instagram at Strange Familiars, one word, no underscore. Please give us a follow there. For Strange Familiars merch, go to strangefamiliars.com/merch. And go to strangefamiliars.com for everything else, links to everything we do, etc. When you see millions of the mouthless dead across your dreams in pale battalions go, say not soft things other men have said, that you remember, for you need not so. Give them not praise, for deaf, how should they know? It is not curses heaped on each pale head. Nor tears, their blind eyes see not your tears flow. Say only this, they are dead, then add thereto, yet many a better one has died before. And scanning o'er the o'ercrowded mass, should you perceive one face that you loved heretofore, it is a spook. None wears the face you